Hello? 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 Guess I'm working. Hello? Guess I'm working. Okay. Okay. I don't know if there's anybody that can hear me yet. Hello? I hear you. Okay. Seems like it's extra slow today. Oh, there's somebody there. Okay. Can you hear me over there? I always get confused whether this is working or not. Okay, great, great. How you doing, everybody there? Wow, it's it's always good to be able to talk to other people about tea and dough. And I was going to try to say some stuff about chapter 13 of Revelation, unless there's immediate questions in there. Everything's going fine. I just got contacted by another media organization. I don't say who it is until they've actually produced the new documentary that they're working on. But it's one of the bigger ones. So we'll see what they want to do. And they were attracted by the Heaven's Gate podcast by the Pineapple Street Media, which, if anybody wants that list of the media, I don't know if I can paste this whole thing into my chat. But I'll try it. What the heck? We'll see what happens. Oh, I see. It only takes 200 characters. Okay, no, it's not going to work. All right, well, never mind that. I'll just post one. The first one I did. I didn't do one for every podcast. Maybe I should, but mainly these 5 were the ones that had the most to address, which I guess I should do some podcasts of just that. Of those each time. I'll put one on there. Anyway, I think that's less than, oh, it's 202 characters. Ha ha ha. Okay, so I'll just say that that worked. All right, so let me get back to Revelations 13. Wow, it's really slow between my computer and internet right now. I guess that's weird. All right. Well, I'll just, maybe the audio's faster, I don't know. Oh yes, I forgot to say in Facebook there that that I was doing a live stream. So bear with me if you don't mind while I do that. While my computer's really slow. I'm still here. I'm just taking the time to type that in. And I think I put the slashes in the wrong direction. There's an aspect about me that gets confused. It's been my whole life. It's almost like a dyslexic kind of thing. That's my excuse anyway. What's going on here? Oh, I see what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm just trying to do this right. Okay, that works. All right, well, cool. I can get back to the live stream. Okay, let's see. First, I'll check to see if there's any questions over here again. You're welcome for that link. Thanks. I've bookmarked it to read it after you live stream, so thank you. All right, cool. Okay, so the first verse of chapter 13 of Revelations. Wow. Is that blurry or what on my... I don't know if your video is as blurry as mine is, but one screen is like blurry as anything and the other one's not. How weird is that? Maybe I should make it smaller. Or it's just taking a... You know what, I'm not going to worry about this now. It's taking too much time to deal with, and I guess you guys hear me, so I'm just going to go with it. I mean, I recommend that anybody that wants to look for themselves to try to figure out, make the connections between what T and Do are teaching. Anybody that's studying what T and Do are teaching, and if they see anything, if you see anything in anywhere in the Revelations or what Jesus is saying, or even the Old Testament that makes you think about them, I'd like to know about it. So Revelation 13:1, and I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Now, you can't see it very well in this, but the words in black are the words that were added by the translators. And sometimes they are part of the way things were said in front of nouns and things like that. So most of the time they're good, I've found. But I try to look at the meanings of all the words. I'm not going to do that right now because it would take forever and we just get through one verse. But all the words, a lot of times, they have multiple meanings, of course, and applications throughout the Bible, throughout the New Testament in terms of the Greek. But one will find that a lot of times a number of the options are all have some accuracy. Because the next level is sort of gone good with this, with teaching us. So, and I stood upon it. So the sand, what's the sand in the sea? The sand, sea. It's actually of the, I don't know if it has to be in there. Or if it got rid of the of, since you can just say, I stood upon sand sea. Now, upon is superimposition of time, place, and order. Okay, so upon. So that's a timing and also a location. It's a place, a time and place, or an order, which could be the order in which the next level was doing their. You can't see that on the screen, I guess. What I'm saying about this. Maybe you can. I thought I made that bigger. So right there you can see how the interpretation of that means all those, those three things that were given as a superimposition as the primary meaning. And then, of course, it gives you the options in the English of about. So you could say, I stood about the sand sea. All right, and that's what I did with my book. I went through like all the options, and then I chose the options that I thought said the most about the nouns that were coming. And that is sand, which is sand, actually literally sand, but goes over to hama, which also is properly at the same time. So there you go with the time aspect. So in other words, there was a specific time when this individual who was talking here, which we don't actually know who it is, but it follows Revelation 12, and sometimes that seems to have a relationship. It seems like the next level did plan to have these come out the way they did. And they helped with the people, the guy that, I guess one guy that did most of the formatting of the chapter and verse, like putting the verse numbers together and chapter names together. And there's no reason to disbelieve that the next level workers could have been, working with that individual so that it would come out as if there were sections, because each of the chapters, have a primary function. Like Revelation 12 is talking about the whole classroom from T's perspective, primarily, and then Revelation 11 is talking about the perspective from T and Do's joint experience, because they always said that they were partners, and they worked together as equals. Like Do wasn't. If T said something that Do didn't understand or thought could be said in a way that we would understand it better, the students, then Do, T wanted Do to do that. Because Do is closer to the students in his growth. So that he could still relate to the students, where T's growth, with the amount of mind that T brought, because T didn't bring all the mind that T has as an older member of the next level. And since I'm saying that, Do said that T could operate more than one vehicle. And that was something that was more advanced to do. I believe he, like that, I think he wouldn't have said that if that was common to older members to do. But older members, it may be common to do, I guess. Because T was the equivalent of, he didn't say this at first, but they always talked about how there was a chief of chiefs. But then I only learned after I left the classroom from something I read, I think. Or maybe he said it in the Beyond Human series, but at the time I didn't remember it. that he was chief administrator. So that meant that chief of chiefs was that the highest individual was the older member, T's older member, I guess. I don't know if that's the way it works, maybe. Maybe it does. Maybe there's only that many generations. Although they said when members got to the next level, then they would work with other older members. But they would always know who their older member was that ushered them, that birthed them into the next level. And while I'm at it, since I'm talking about things that I know aren't really evident in the scriptures, or maybe they are, but I just haven't located them yet, or interpreted them that well. But that Theodore indicated that we would remember everything that happened while we were in the human condition. I mean, the lessons learned. That's what we would retain the most. We would retain the most. I gotta stop slurring my words. When I get tired, it seems to happen more easily sometimes. I have to get a second wind, get some water. So, I was talking about memory of what we would remember, because, that was a concern, I guess, for some that had, and they brought it up at a meeting, and you could probably hear about it in the audio tapes if it's a part of the audio tapes that are able to be heard. I haven't re-listened to them all. I haven't hardly listened to many of them, really. Maybe 4 or 5. It would do me good to listen to them, because I'd probably see a lot more. I definitely would see a lot more connections with some of the things that I remember, and I might even correct myself. But I don't seem to have the time. Anyway, I'm not going to start making excuses for myself. It'd be nice to get to them. Actually, I'm going to be doing some driving pretty soon. You know what? Just reminded me, I'm going to make some CDs so I can listen to them on the drive. Good idea. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw the beast rise up out of the sea. So the beast, I've pretty much, I talked about this in the last live stream. That was Revelation 14 I was trying to focus on. Or 10, I guess it was. Yeah, it was actually 10. I think I wrote that wrong on my description. I'll go back and look at that. But beast is this beast that's Sirion again, and it's a dangerous animal, a venomous wild beast. And So this is talking about, it's a human, a mammalian, and remember the human is equivalent, the space aliens, according to Tiendo, were equivalent to humans. They called them human equivalents, because they hadn't outgrown their humanness. They only started on that and got to a grade level that allowed them to be in the next level company, to some degree, even though they weren't watched all the time. I'm just adding things as I remember them, because which was something like I perked up when they said that they weren't watched all the time. Their job was to be watchers, I think, Tiendo didn't talk about what their job was, I don't think. But then Enoch talked about it, and Jesus talked about Enoch a little bit, or actually Jude did, but Jesus related to Jude, I think. So that's how I'm making the connections of what we can trust. And I think he did also refer to something else that Enoch said. But I'll have to go back and research that. But anyway, I like to try to stay as close to what Tiendo said and what they said we could rely on as I can, because that's the way to stay on track. Because otherwise, it's good to use everything else and take advantage, look at everything that we can, and in order to understand better what looks like was meant in the context and using the references to the Old Testament, of course. I know I'm repeating myself a lot for previous live streams, but the process is what's important, of trying to be thorough. Tiendo taught thoroughness. That was one of the first words, well, not the first word, but when we were in the campground in Wyoming, that's when the overcoming started, really. Even though there was a certain amount of overcoming that starts when you decide to leave everything behind. And, after the initial doing that for a while, and so when the energy from that kind of wears off, that's when individuals would start to miss or re-examine what they were doing. And so a lot of people dropped away in that first 9 and a half, 10 months. Yeah, 9 months. I think I should have left it at that. Tiendo talked about it as 9 months, I believe, from when they started to first go public, starting in, I think, Canada College. Even though they had talked to a private group before in North Hollywood in April, early April, and then the students gave a meeting at Stanford. Is the way I understand it. I wasn't in the group then, so I didn't join them, but that's the way I understand it from Tiendo, and I think that's also evident in, well, maybe, I think it's evident in the Heaven's Gate book as well, in the itinerary that's in there of 1975-6 meeting schedule. So that's what a beast is. Okay, now a saw also means receiving the knowledge of, perceiving, and telling and understanding. And so that's what he's getting from this beast, that it's actually the human kingdom. But the leaders of the human kingdom is what they're talking about, because the beast is described in several places as having these 7 heads and 10 horns. I'm not going to go into them now because I want to get through this. And the 7 heads, best I could figure, are the G7, which has changed now, and went to G8. Now I think it's back to when they got rid of Russia. Because Russia went into Crimea, they changed it back to the G7. And so it remained the G7 for the sake of prophecy, I guess you could look at it that way. So, and it also relates, I believe, to the ones that have basically colonized the 7 continents. And that all of them are basically seeming like they're cooperating in Antarctica, which is where Hitler supposedly went. Well, I don't know if he got there or not, but I wouldn't be surprised. So, Tiendo did have the book that was about Admiral Byrd's North Pole adventure, the Inner Earth experience that he reported in the classroom from the early days that I remember in the 70s. Like, well, no, I guess by the time we didn't have a library until the early 80s, because that's when we moved into houses. Now I'm gonna look for some questions here for a second. What is some of my favorite music? Well, I really don't want to get into that now, but I mean, I like a lot of music, a lot of different music, you know, but I don't really know that I have a favorite, you know. I mean, my vehicle, you know, grew up with the Grateful Dead and the heart, you know, the historic rock in the 70s. So, you know, those all have a nostalgic appeal to my vehicle. And, but T&O provided Kitaro at one point, a Japanese composer, and Gilbert and Sullivan. I like Gilbert and Sullivan music because I liked it when I was in the classroom and we used to listen to it a little bit. It was optional. And one individual got into it too much and they ended up discontinuing it. And I don't think anybody was sad about it. I didn't miss it. You know, there was so much to do in the classroom. You know, that's why if somebody was going to be into it, you know, and it was going to distract them from all the things that there were to do in the classroom, and not that there was a big variety of things to do, but you know, same things anybody has to do in living in a house, you know, with the laundry and the food and the cars, maintenance and everything that any family has to do. But we had a lot of help with all those things, and so there was a lot of free time until we started in the 90s, in the late 80s with the projects, the writing projects, starting with 1988. And so like, for instance, one of the things that we had to do all the time, if we wanted to, was re-listen to the tapes. And T&O always encouraged them to listen to those audio tapes so that we could get it into our heads, all this. Because the vehicles, you know, they don't take to it that easily. I'm sure individuals listening to this have all come through an uphill motion to come to be even willing to listen to me talk about T&O and the revelations and all that. It's difficult because there's so much against treating this seriously. But so now I got off track. Oh, the music and how that was like a filter. You know, that's one of the things that I really want to stress with the media whenever I'm interviewed, but they don't seem to actually, at this point, they haven't put out in the documentaries that I've been a part of. Much of, if any, I can't really remember any, was that the changes that T&O made and the things that they instigated that didn't come true, and the things that they instigated that changed their thinking about, and how they came to know things later, and how they felt like they also made mistakes, even though I don't see them as mistakes. I see them as part of the filtering, because of the people that would see them as mistakes and then think they can't be who they said they were because they wouldn't make mistakes, which is a total misaccurate. The only thing that's the main thing that's misinformation about that is that part of the task that T&O took was to be willing to make mistakes, because they had to pull in the information that their older members wanted them to give. He's older member. But it actually, what was ironic about that, the way that was working, was that it was T's mind that was T's older member, I think. Because T didn't bring all the mind she needed, that she had, in order to do this task. So she could also work an overview. I'm not sure of that. It might have been a different individual that was T's older member. Because Doe didn't talk about it like this exactly, but he did let on to it one time, and that's what I was trying to pull on. But it doesn't really matter. You know, T and Doe would say that all the time in the classroom when we would ask questions or think about things that weren't going to advance our growth much. But just for the sake of understanding, whenever we try to limit the next level, then we can know that we're probably wrong. I mean, I think we are wrong. I don't think we have to even say probably. We're wrong if we try to limit the next level in any way. So, let's see, the music. So yeah, filters is actually what I really wanted to get into with that, because that's actually more important to helping other people recognize the truth that T and Doe were teaching. You know, be willing to look at it, because when they hear the stories, of course, that are told about all the other cults, no wonder why everybody's afraid of T and Doe, of course, because they were equivalent. They were made to look equivalent, but they weren't equivalent at all. Not in any way, shape, or form. Because they didn't even have just two cult leaders. One cult leader. They had two cult leaders. You know, so they weren't even right in that regard. And the cult leaders weren't dictators. Well, they were dictators in terms of what the requirements were to become a member of the next level. They dictated that, but they didn't. It wasn't like they were saying, you must do this. That's what a dictator does. It says, you do this or else. They weren't about that. There was no threats. They didn't hold a meeting and say, okay, now we want to tell you all what you have to do if you want to go to heaven. They didn't even say it that way. Well, they did say it that way to the next level, but not to, that if you didn't do this, you would go to hell. They didn't say that at all. Never. You would be in danger of going to hell if you went against the next level. But I didn't learn that from them. They didn't say that to me. I learned that from Jesus. If you are teaching other people to go against the kingdom of God, to not believe in them, to not believe in their teachings that came from the incarnate older members, who T and Doe said were Jesus, Elijah, Moses, Enoch, and Adam. So Doe is the sixth. And then the final return, which is the seventh closeness, which they all corresponded to closenesses. I suggest anybody who wants to examine, especially if you're interested in the book of Revelations and what T and Doe said about it, then I suggest you examine this document. That was called UFO Missionaries Extraordinary. This is the only amount of it that I've actually typed in. So I'll oh, you know what? Oh, that's not the one that's on my blog. All right, I'm sorry about that. That's weird. Yeah, it is. How come it's not showing up as a link? Oh, because maybe it's got a... No. I don't know. Well, you can copy it anyway and then paste it into your browser. I think you'll get to it that way. It's on my WordPress blog. So I'll go back to what I was doing. Music and filters. Yeah, so yeah, that'd be another link to actually look at the blog post on the Pineapple Press. I included a lot of the filters in there. So I'll let people read that. I'll keep on going through Revelations 13. So, and I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea. I've said it now 3 times. Okay, so the sea is the human kingdom, or the sand actually are the humans in the human kingdom, I think is the way it... Or maybe not, maybe I got that wrong, because the human kingdom is the sea. I believe that is the case for metaphorically speaking, according to the Old Testament. And sand, I think, is talking about the ground, actually, the literal sand. And it's also talking about the sea as the sea, actually, the literal sea. And so that's why he's standing on the sand of the sea, in other words, the coast. And he sees the beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. I already went through that. I'm not going to go through the definition of the heads and the horns. Anybody can look that up in the Strong's Concordance. And upon his horns 10 crowns. So that's, he's saying that there are these kings that, oh, wow, you know what, I didn't even recognize this before. It didn't make sense to me that the because the horns I was saying were the financial ministers, and the heads were the presidents and the kings of the countries. So it didn't make sense that they had a crown of his horns, 10 crowns. Yet I never pursued it, and it just dawned on me now what that might mean. A better interpretation of the crowns, meaning the individuals that were the Luciferian space aliens, because they received a degree of a crown. Just like the disciples of Jesus seemed to get crowns, because they're depicted in Revelations 4 as throwing them down. Or maybe it was Revelations 5. I'll see if I get mixed up by that. Switch over the Revelations. Which I didn't have this queued because I didn't know I was going to go over here. I got to get it printed in my brain better where exactly this is, so I don't have to, let's see, you're not seeing it. It's like oh, there it is. Okay, finally came up. Okay, well, I guess they just search for crown. That would be the easiest way to do this. And searching the words crown in there. Okay. Go to the bottom. Now it says in Revelation 14:14 that the one who sits on the cloud has on his head a golden crown. Okay, he's got a golden crown. That's the, in other words, it's purely. Well, Tiendo talked about how the process of overcoming was actually refining the gold into pure gold, but actually the example that they first used wasn't that. I'm sorry. I'm not saying they didn't say that, but I more remember them talking about it as talking about it as churning the butter. I mean, to make butter from the milk fat. So it's getting the best stuff from the milk. And also, but you did also talk about it as a clarifying of the butter. That's what the word she used, I think. Clarifying of the butter. And, oh yes, it was clarifying of the butter. See, I'm recognizing more now as I speak, because that was the word she used. And I realized when I was a cook in restaurants, while I was in the classroom, we learned how to clarify the butter, which was basically melting it down and then cooling it, and when it would cool, it would separate the clear stuff would be separated on the top, and the rest of the stuff would be which you would get rid of, and then you would use that for cooking because it would take a higher temperature. Wow, it even takes a higher temperature. A higher temperature. That's really interesting. Anyway, it's you know, like. You see, that's the good thing about going through these scriptures. I learn more every time I go through them about what it seems to more accurately mean. Although it doesn't necessarily mean everything else before that doesn't mean something related to that as well. But the crown, on the crown I was going towards was where it said that in Revelation 12:1, that there appeared a great wonder in heaven, the woman clothed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and under her head, upon her head, a crown of 12 stars. So those, I believe, are the 12 older members, students. So in other words, among the students, there are also those that were elders, like the 24 elders, and then the 12 appear to be older than the 24 elders, even though they're among the 24 elders, I believe. But then again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this the 12 and the 24, that would make 36, and we had 38, and then maybe it was only 2 individuals, plus the 4 who left later, so 6 individuals. That would be the individuals that would need to come back. I don't know. That's interesting to think of it that way, because then if you add in the 4 living beings to the numbers, no, but the Revelation only talked about the 4 living beings and then the 24 elders, so that would make it 28. And I think those would be included in the 4 living beings, as the 12 pillars of the temple, and these 12 stars. I think that would make some more sense to me. But you know, I could be wrong on how I got all those numbers. But it works for now, I think. And you know, that was something that T and Do always said about some things, that it works for our understanding right now, but they knew there was more to it. And you can see them actually talking about it that way in the audio tape that I posted on my website under the name of Blackhawk, on the YouTube site, USP 3SPM that you're on right now. You search for Blackhawk as one word, it should bring up the 3 videos that I posted that were from the audios that T and Do made while they were living in Black Hawk, which I believe is related to actually Revelations 12, where T goes to, an eagle comes and takes her. An eagle, like a black hawk, right? So the second time she's taken. The first time she fled into the she fled into the wilderness the first time, and that was and that was Revelation 12:6. When we went to the wilderness, I think at that point was actually Wyoming, because that was the place that was prepared by God to feed her, that they should feed her there 1,203 days. And what they were feeding her was the instructions for the classroom on the overcoming. And that was also the feed of the students that were with her at the time, because T and Do compared themselves to being like a scarab beetle, and the way the scarab beetle would carry their young trailing behind them, and all attached. She first brought that up in around 1980 or anything, no, before that, because we were still going back and forth between Texas and Wyoming, and we were living outdoors in tents, and we were in like a park area in San Antonio vicinity, and that's when we just got those jumpsuits, the certain kind of jumpsuits. That was our first kind of like uniform. We had another uniform after that, and then we didn't have any uniforms, but they did in the end. The third uniform they had, maybe they had one while they were in the classroom. Maybe it was the same one that they were wearing when they laid down their vehicles. I don't know for sure. I don't remember Rio talking about it, because I wasn't there then. But so yeah, so I know I keep on going into all different things, but I'm going to get back to some of them. And the woman was, Revelation 12:14, and the woman were given, and to the woman were given, 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place where she is nourished for a time and times and half a time from the face of the serpent. So I think that's Black Hawk. I think the next level prepared the Black Hawk place in order for T to pull in the next steps and to escape what Do called was the boogers and the negativity from the Luciferian space alien fallen angels souls and the discarnates that were against them, and the thoughts of everybody that was against them, or thought that they had hoodwinked their loved ones, and all that. So that's what the dragon Lucifer was actually going after, and Lucifer has his crew, which is described as being before that in Revelations 12. Revelation 12:3, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. So, and there you go again with the 7 heads and 10 horns. So and the 7 crowns upon his heads. Oh yeah, it even says his heads. Okay, it's even the plural there of the 7 heads. So maybe that is maybe I'm wrong about that, being 12, no, being 7. I don't know how many Luciferian space alien fallen angels there are. I just know that Tiendo said that that some of the graduates that were graduating were going to be replacing them. I know that. And maybe that's the 7 angels over the 7 churches. I hadn't thought about it that way before. And because the dragon having 7 heads would still constitute the, because Tiendo did say that that the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls took control of the individuals that had the most influence over humans. And so the heads of state, the heads of the countries, the kings of the world are those individuals. And, you know, but also movie stars, you know, could be they can have their hands in the till of many humans. Because, you know, in soul form and by bombarding the population with thoughts. Because Tiendo said that that's what the Luciferian space aliens do. They can bombard the earth with thoughts. And there's a movie that was called They Live that was really good, that Tiendo got us to see. And I know it's around, I know it can be found, that shows that the billboards were, the aliens were invading and they were underground, and the billboards were, they were all among us, walking around in human vehicles, and we couldn't really tell who was who from the ones that weren't space aliens, but there was a way to tell that one of these individuals in this movie figured out, and I forget what that was now, but I'm going to go back and look at it, but they said in it that the billboards were like giving subliminal messages that you could only see if you wore a certain kind of glasses that the aliens would wear. So they would understand what was I think that's the way it was. But the humans that weren't wearing those special sunglasses, it weren't just any sunglasses. Those special sunglasses, they couldn't see that, and what they would see would be like, I mean, it might be a message like reproduce. I don't think that was one of them, but that would be one of them that I think that Tiendo might say that the space aliens would want to propagate. You know, reproduce. To try to make more babies, you know, because you need more vehicles, so, you know, to give you more of your biological materials that you want to use to make hybrids, and you know, and also to have more hands to work with and money to work with. by developing all the technologies and everything, so that they could try to build spacecrafts to get out of here, because they don't want to be here, because they've already experienced not being here when they were students. Even though they got too big for their britches and didn't know they were students, and then lost that perspective. And then Tiendo said that they gave them a number of chances, many chances, to return. But in this next verse, you can see where they were thrown down again. And this next verse, actually, in Revelation 12, is, I've gone through this already, but I'm learning more things as I go through it. So I think this is going to be the a more updated point of view interpretation. Comparing the next verse, actually in Revelation 12:2, talks about, it's compared to what Daniel was talking about. That's the only thing I wanted to bring up at this point, because he was also pointing out this, what's happening now. He was given a bunch of dreams that did that, just like John was. Maybe in the same way, who knows? So they could get it accurately. And I saw one of the heads as were wounded to death. Wait a minute, what am I doing? I wasn't in Revelation 12 there. No wonder why it wasn't the verse I thought it was. Sorry, I got confused there, and I wasn't showing on the screen what I was talking about. I was over here talking about this. Okay, where there appeared a wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. I know I went through that already. But then the one part I wanted to say, the tail, he drew the tail of the stars. So he's got stars too, in his crown. The stars of heaven, they're called. And they're cast to the earth. So what I was trying to get at before, though, was that the crowns are different in different interpretations. So, like, for instance, in here, in Revelation 12:3, when your crown is diadema, diadem. It's a blue band marked with white, which Persian kings used to bind on their turban or tiara. It's a kingly ornament for the head, the crown. And yet, in Revelation, where is the crown mentioned? The crown that T has is the crown that's Stephanos, a crown, a mark of royal or a general exalted rank, the wealth or garland which was given as a prize to victors in public games. So that's something that somebody receives for winning a prize, not just inheriting a kingship, because they were born into it. They have to earn it. Metaphorically, the eternal blessed, which will be given as a prize to the genuine servants of God in Christ. The crown wreath, which is the reward of the righteous. Yes, that's a crown. And it said that they threw down their crowns, which I'm getting back to that. And I don't know if I'll be able to get back to but it does say here in Revelation 6:2, talking about crowns, that the one sitting on the white horse that had a bow, and of course that bow is the rainbow, it's the covenant. It also relates to being the litter of souls being born into the next level. Souls with vehicles born into the next level, because everything has to have a vehicle with it. That's the process. It's from the human kingdom that vehicles from the next level are grown. The human kingdom is the incubator. But the crown here is the same crown as the Stephanos, to show you that this is Jesus here. This is Do actually here in Revelation 6:2, where Christians are saying that it's Lucifer, even though it's got a relationship to Lucifer in terms of the fact that I believe Bill Clinton was in a white vehicle, was a Luciferian space alien soul that was using that vehicle as his white-skinned horse. And Bill Clinton was the one in 1997 that said they got to make sure that this doesn't happen again, referring to Doe and the students that left by laying down their bodies, human bodies, to death, to permanent rest, to go back to the dust of the earth, while their souls ascended. So it's like, so then you could say it is Lucifer. And I don't know if Clinton relates to, in his history, it's certainly a dynasty. I mean, I know they're all connected. I mean, even Obama's got this. He's very far removed, actually, in his connection, his lineage to the kings of the earth in the past, and whether it's I think it was back to the Hebrew. I think potentially. I know somebody related Bush to being descended from a Hebrew king. Maybe it was David, King David. Which would make sense that the Luciferians would be right there trying to, grooming the vehicles that were going to be used to rule the nations so that they could get off this planet, which they weren't able to. The next level, I think, limits them on for how long they can do that. Each time, afterwards when the member of the next level leaves. So I want to follow through with crowns. To where they showed that they had thrown them down. I still didn't get to that spot yet. I think it's 4. Here we go. And round about the throne were 4 and 20 seats. Now, seats is equivalent to positions, jobs, tasks. This is like seats on the spacecraft. In other words, you don't get on the spacecraft and they don't just huddle a whole bunch of people into the craft and just say, okay, now you're in the next level, And so, I mean, they might do that at times when they have meetings, and or at times when they, when they first graduate, Tiendo said there would be a joyful celebration, and that the ones that came back that hadn't succeeded, because they said everybody that came would come back, and the ones that didn't succeed in conquering their vehicle, or conquering a human vehicle, would be embarrassed because they would see how, not that they would all be shame like that, but they would be embarrassed because they would recognize on their own that they let something that was very small actually get in the way of their graduation. I can relate to that. Anyway, I'm not going to go into that, but so these 24 elders, 24 says 20 elders, 4 and 20 elders is the way they say it, were clothed in white raiment. So this is, I believe this is depicting the briefing that Tiendo talked about. And Do talked about actually in Beyond Human, I believe. I'm not sure if oh wait. Maybe it was the 88 update. I read it recently. There might have been 88 updates. So look in both places. You can search. Hopefully people that are interested in this information have all this data in text format as much as possible, so that they can do searches to connect these things if that's of interest to them to do. Because though it does talk about some of this. So they have on their heads, they're clothed in white raiment. In other words, they've purified their garment, their vehicle. The raiment is always a vehicle, because Tiendo talked about how the soul was actually wrapped around the human vehicle. That's the way it's actually, if you go into the roots of that, you can actually see that that's what they're talking about is happening. And that's why they depict it as a piece of clothing. Tiendo also said that it's a piece of clothing. It's thought of as a garment. That's why he said that T put her garment in he didn't say storage. He said, oh, I almost had it. I had it. I could see the word, but I couldn't actually see it enough to say it. Wardrobe. He said wardrobe. T put her vehicle in wardrobe. So, and he said that about his vehicle too. Or maybe he only said that about his vehicle. Now I'm going to think about it, actually. I think he only said that about his vehicle, that it was put in wardrobe, but he implied that that some had put their vehicles in wardrobe. I'm not sure where I read that now, though, recently, where I saw that. So I'm exploring at the time, so it's always a process. Tiendo didn't do this when they came and gave us a meeting. They didn't like him and ha about, oh, I wonder if this means that, I wonder if that means that. No, they did that homework before they came to the group and decided what they were going to talk about. And And I don't know how much they talked about, because they didn't have notes in front of them. They never had anything in front of them to, give them cues of what to. Well, I'm not saying never. A lot of times what they would do is they would, when they knew there was something they wanted to talk about with the students, and it came up while they were talking with students, like in the craft, taking care of, how to do a better job with making the bread and stuff like that. Sometimes conversations would start, and T would say something. Because T was always the one who came to the East Lab. I was in the East Lab. We wore yellow aprons, where the Neutral Lab wore blue aprons. They never attached any significance to those colors that I'm aware of, except that we did have colors assigned to us, and those colors were blue for the Star Sirius group, and red for the Altair group. The Altair group was the first group, and that was considered to be red. The second group was blue, which was associated with the star constellation Sirius. The third group was the constellation Procyon, which was green. Holy smokes. And the fourth group was Fomalhaut, and it was yellow. Pale green. Holy smokes. Pale green. Holy smokes. Wow. This is blowing my mind, because that's the colors in the book of Revelations. A red, a black is also, in some translations, dark, and jacinth, actually in Revelations 9, I believe, is referring to that. And jacinth is a very dark, it can be a very dark, like purple, blue. And green as Procyon is the fourth horse. And T said that I was green. She told me that. And I didn't know what it meant. I asked her, I said, I don't understand. And she said, I don't know. I just see you as green. I think I wasn't. They talked about how some of the students didn't come from the next level and were humans that they said that were doing a good job to have connected with Tiendo and to be in the classroom. They didn't say who was in that category. I don't know if I was in that category or not. I don't really think I was, but it doesn't really matter. But maybe that's the category of somebody that's that can do the job that wasn't, that they knew it would probably not succeed. I don't know. The next level knows a lot about how this all works. And so they know that there's not going to be, they only got so many seats they're going to provide, actually. And we have to actually come up to speed with gaining those seats. So they're not going to, so everybody's not going to make it at the same time. It's all in stages. And green has to do with, like Jesus said, look, the fields are green. And, we need more workers. Meaning that there were plants that were approaching, ready to give fruit. Fruit being birthed into the next level, membership. And that fruit itself, but that's a gradual birth, so that you can be born into the next level without having completed your overcoming. Like Doe said, some of the members that graduated among those 38 would have to come back and finish their overcoming. He didn't say how many, though. So it's anybody's guess. But I think we can be relatively sure that, well, I don't need to go any further with it. I don't need to suppose this and that. That's using my mind to try to come up with how to make the numbers work better, and it's not necessary. I do it because of the prophecies. Okay, you know what? It's nothing wrong with doing it, I don't think. I'm going through, I feel like I'm having a conversation, I'm saying things to you, and then I'm hearing thoughts, and I think some of those thoughts are from Tian expressing to me things that but I could also be hearing, Luciferian space aliens trying to confuse me, so I must sound like a babbling idiot when I'm doing this. But what the heck? At least I'm trying to correct myself. Because I think I do come to see the things that can be coming from the next level that I'm not really picking up on entirely. And then they give me a little bit more help with that, another idea, and so then I go with that, and then it seems more right. But then the other one seems like it's got a potential to be partially right too. So it's like I've said all along. There's many ways of looking at, there's just like there's many paths to the top of the mountain, Tian taught. The human kingdom, the mountain of the human kingdom. But there's only one way off, and that is by following the behavior and ways and thinking of and putting all our energy of all our heart, all our mind, all our soul, and all our strength into becoming a member of the next level. Talked about garments, and there's all kinds of places where Tian also described next level vehicles as equivalent, sort of like the way that humans put on scuba gear to go underwater, and then they put on a spacesuit to go in outer space. They don't necessarily have to be in the same vehicle all the time, but they don't have time anyway, and so the vehicles are assigned according to the tasks that those individuals had grown to be able to do. And another task that an individual can grow to do, which I don't know where it stands in the order of growing to do tasks, is to be the pilot, the soul being a pilot, the physical soul being a pilot to a spacecraft that can have many tasks associated with it. And so that the individuals in the spacecraft, the humans might think that in the spacecraft all there was some screens there, and they wouldn't know, what would work the propulsion system, but maybe what's powering the propulsion system is a soul that has accumulated that much force in their the power of them is so densely, it can manipulate matter. It can do things. It can shoot laser beams out of its whatever, hardware. But the hardware is biological. It can be a biological spacecraft. They said that in 1976 in the first classroom that I attended, which really was a classroom, because that took place where they talked about that. That took place in Laramie, in the University of Wyoming at Laramie, where they somehow made arrangements to use one of their student classrooms. And we all piled in there, about 100 of us, and we had a meeting, and we did that, I would say 3 or 4 times during the time that during those first months that we were in that Wyoming area, at the Vidavoo rustic camping area that had no facilities, and so it was definitely wilderness territory, and in the Medicine Bow National Forest. And Medicine Bow, Doe is the medicine. He's the bow. Medicine covenant. The covenant is the medicine. Goes back to Revelation 6:2. Even the name of Medicine Bow, because medicine was lessons. Tiendo talked about that. And medicine for the human kingdom is also lessons, the same lessons. Humans are getting the same lessons that we got in the classroom. They're growing from all they're potentially growing from all their experience. I'm not saying they're as this, well, I'm not one of them. I am a human. I'm in a human vehicle. But I've got anyway, but, and the spirit of the vehicle is what's generated by the experiences of the vehicle in thought and deed from birth. It's one of the eyes. Tiendo talked about the three eyes. The eye being the soul, the eye being the mind of the vehicle. Actually, the mind of the soul, actually, which is the holy mind. It's the mind that came, the instructions that came from the next level, the behavior and ways that came from the next level, the examples that came from the next level, the programming. That's all programming. That's actually can drive things, that drive the hardware, like I'm describing now. So that they could drive a next level biological vehicle that could be who knows what size. Tiendo gave an example of a task that individuals might have in the next level as being, let's say you were given a task to bring water to a planet. And you're a crew. They don't do things necessarily by one person. It's fun to work with others, and we learn better when we have other people to interface with and be our tech partners. Does this seem the way the next level would do it? Because any task that you're given doesn't come with all the details. It comes with enough details to where you can use those details that were given to you to guide you in how to perform the task. Because things are going to happen while you're doing the task, because the environments that you're working in are living environments. And so they're in processes. And so, for instance, Tiendo didn't say all this. All they said was that we could be given a task to deliver water to the planet, and that we would do that task until we got the next level told us to do another task, combine it or in addition to, or combine it or stop doing that task and do a different task. So the lesson that came with that was that when you're given a task to do, you want to do it thoroughly, you want to do it quickly, you want to, whatever tools you need to do that task, you go to the tool chest, the storage area where they keep the tools, whatever they are, and there might be computer systems. And I'm just giving you an example of something that Tiendo talked about that they're having. And then any elements that you needed for those tasks were also received out of their warehouses or wherever they have from the planets. Maybe that's what the planet series is. Maybe it's a warehouse for whatever element that is that appears to be like, you know, so bright that you can see it from billions of miles away. Or millions of light years away. I think it was billions of miles away between Mars and Jupiter. But maybe that's the element that's in the spacecrafts that allows the anti-gravity to exist, and also makes them, powers them so they can, you know, seem to go like the speed of light, while keeping an atmosphere that physical vehicles can exist within that spacecraft. Anyway, I mean, you know, actually, I don't remember if Tiendo talked about this, but you know, humans seem to have discovered that a lot of the meteorites or meteors that fell and left a big crater, they find certain elements in those craters, abundance of them, as opposed to places right next to those areas that don't have the abundance of those elements. So it's like, you can say maybe the next level gives instructions, okay, make a deposit here of this nickel. You know, and so they have a crew that goes someplace to get the nickel, and then takes it to the planet. And and it might not be an easy task to get the nickel out of whatever planet has that nickel, abundance of it. It might be difficult. I don't know. You know, I can't imagine actually what they would experience, but maybe it could be like a Star Trek scenario where there's life forms growing that are hostile to the next level, and yet they don't want to interfere with them. I don't know. You know, I don't want to start, you know, using my imagination here, because it won't serve any purpose for well, I don't think it's that harmful necessarily, but because that's not a, see, I am putting things together that Tiendo said, so I don't feel like I'm getting off track by thinking these things. And we do know that the planet was created by the next level, so I shouldn't be so, you know, against, you know, talking about that stuff, that potential information or point of view. So, let's see, where should I go now? Well, they had crowns of gold in that Revelation 4:4. That's what I was getting to the whole time. And those crowns there in that context is the Stephanos as well. So that's something that they've earned. Now, I believe that I didn't get to the place where they throw them down. So let me go to that before I talk any more about the crowns. There you go. Revelations 4:10. The 24 elders then fall down before him that sat on the throne, and worship him that liveth forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne, saying, Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive the glory and honor and power, for thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure they are and were created. I think that's talking about T on the throne at that point, because this is talking about the briefing, I believe, and the throwing down of the crowns was casting down the human vehicles that they had, not the human vehicles they had, the next level vehicles and potentially early student level, next level vehicles. In other words, the vehicles that were reported as being atrophied on the spacecraft. I think Doe talked about that in 88 update. That some may have come through, and he also talked about it, I think, in USA Today ad. So that some may have come through those crashes at Roswell and I think Aztec were the two that he paid attention to, and there were a few others that I suspect might have been included in that. And I don't know for sure, but I wondered about that crash that happened in 1897. I mean, if it didn't happen in 1897, and it wasn't just one member, and I had a feeling that might be John the Baptist, and I suspect that John the Baptist was an up-and-coming, growing archangel. May not have been an archangel yet, but he might have been. Although Jesus said that he was still a man, it's an anthropos, which is anthropology, the type of vehicle, of a humanoid vehicle. So maybe I'm wrong about that, but he might have been. It might have been a student anyway. One of the students, I believe, is the way it would work. I believe most of the Old Testament prophets were students that were being apprenticed. The apprenticing was being given a task to do certain things that the Old Testament prophets were doing. Tell the truth to the kings, and and many times give their lives as well. Of course, I think they all did that. All died in service to the next level. I don't know about all of them. I can't say all of them. But see, one would think then that John the Baptist was more advanced than the rest. Was a soul that was more advanced than the other souls, or because he didn't need those lessons at that time. That's why I would think he's one of the four living beings who seem to be. So they don't throw down their crowns. See, the 24 elders fall down before him, sit on the throne, and worship him that liveth forever and ever, and cast their crowns before the throne. But they do lay down their lives, I believe, in another verse, the four living beings. I'm not going to go to that right now to prove that, but they don't have crowns. So So maybe they put their vehicles in storage. Maybe they had next level vehicles. All right, so that got to that. That kind of finished that loop of so let me I guess go back to this is 10 horns and crowns, 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Okay, well, I'm not going to try to go to that in any more detail with that. Let's go back to I gotta switch screens here, don't I? Okay, so I'm going to read it before it updates on the YouTube page. It's acting like it's stalled. Maybe the video's dead on it. You know what I'm going to do with these? I'm gonna have to post my own videos because I'm recording these as well. So, oh, there it updated finally. Jesus, it's slow. It's way behind what I'm doing, what I'm saying. I'm seeing a question. I'll take a shot for a question here. But let me start with. Thomas asked, several students didn't give exit statements, at least not on camera. I don't know why. No, I don't know why. I don't even really actually know their names. I don't remember. I didn't actually try to line them up. I should be able to remember, though. I'll think about it. I'll try to get back to you, but I don't know why. Well, I know that everything in the classroom pertaining to the public was always optional. Like, for instance, when we made videos, when we first started writing, actually, in around 1991 or so, or maybe two. It was opened up to anybody who wanted to write, and then when some didn't really feel like they wanted to, those said that it doesn't go towards your grade. You know, it's not like you're doing better if you become a writer. It's just not something that, it's not a task that you're going to do. And you know, maybe your vehicle is not equipped for it, because the vehicles have different strengths and weaknesses. And they're not, one isn't better than the other. The object is to take over the vehicle, and we all get what we need in terms of the vehicles we have. That counts for everybody that's listening to this too, now or whenever this, you know, someone might listen to it later, who is trying to take steps in this direction. Direction of Tiendo. And the beast which I saw, let's see. No, I was gonna go through some other questions. Let me look here. Yes, there is a way to get a zip file of everything the classroom left behind. John Thompson, I hope you're still there. Right. Last call is on HD database, right. Just send me an email to SawyerHG. I'll write it down. So, yeah, SawyerHG@yahoo.com. HG like in Heaven's Gate. Well, let me see if I can get some more questions in here. Wow, there's a lot of comments in here. I'm not going to get to what I wanted to get to in Revelation 13. Unless well, we'll see what happens. Doesn't matter. I'm just looking through the comments. There's a lot. So, yeah, I understand you wanting to be a part of a classroom, but the way that Tiendo laid it out at this point, the classroom, so to speak, is we're all flying solo. And that's not to say that if they find somebody else that wants to fly, duo with you in this study or, physically, and, that you couldn't do that. Of course you could. But that's not my business. I'm not, the classroom that they had is not offered anymore. So if you did that, well, I don't know. You just need to talk to Tiendo about it and see what happens in terms of. I can understand wanting to be with somebody else to have those experiences, but you see, it's not gonna be the same experience, even if you duplicate like the things that I've talked about and described, and that are described in some of the audio tapes of the Nutrilab. If you put on a blue apron and you cut your hair short and you shaved and you didn't wear any makeup like the females didn't. They might have wore a little bit when they had a job in the world, and like some of them were managers in the world. They had to go to meetings sometimes, and so they would sometimes wear a dress. It wouldn't be a long dress. It would be like one that was like over the knees. And they tried to get jobs that they didn't have to do that, and they ended up getting jobs where they could wear a pantsuit. In Texas and California, there was no problem with whatever they wore at the time. But when we were in Texas, there was still some backwards people in terms of dress codes. Anyway, so I got to go on. God bless you for what you did for me. Thank you. I can use all the blessings I can get. I mean the help from the next level. I know there is no true classroom until the next age, but if we are to impress the next level for the future age, where the next level may consider us to be worthy, is it not desirable to have a classroom? What's desirable is to follow everything that Tiendo gave. And they said the formula was to separate from the human kingdom, and that the overriding part of that formula was to believe in everything, to believe that Tiendo are the creators of the earth, or from the creators of the earth, and created the earth and all life forms. Didn't say create the universe. Junodi wrote it very well. And that the stand for Ti and Do. So the task now is difficult, more difficult than forming a classroom. Forming a classroom would be easy in the context of what it takes to actually stand up for Ti and Do. And the belief of that they're from the Creator's kingdom that created the earth and all the life forms. Because that's where you're going to run into the objection to that that's going to face us with the overcoming of our vehicles. And then in the Heaven's Gate book, you've got all the behaviors and ways that were listed in the major and minor offenses, and major and lesser offenses. And I shouldn't call them minor because they weren't listed as minor, lesser offenses. And you've got also the 17 steps that will be guidelines for working with others, mostly, fellow students. So that if you are working in a that would be your classroom then. Putting that information out, standing up for Ti and Do. And meanwhile, you might have a job in the world to pay for the apartment, or to pay for your camper or the campsite, or to have food. I mean, yeah, you can ask humans for help. You can go church to church if you want to. And there was no... Ti and Do didn't define what you couldn't do. They were just saying that that would be your lessons. You'd be learning your lessons by separating from the human kingdom, leaving everything behind. However fast you want to move in that direction. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the chat room talking when the camera's over here. But so I mean, there's nobody's being held back. But trying to duplicate the classroom the way it existed, you don't have an older member, so there's no way. And I'm not an older member, so there's no way that could happen. I mean, what Doe said in terms of me, the best, if the older member's not here, the best you can do is connect with an active student. Now, I don't know if Doe would consider me an active student. I can't tell for sure. I'm trying to be active, and I'm trying to abide by the lessons. I'm not saying I do it 100%. So, and even if I was an active student, connecting with me, you're doing that by connecting with putting out the videos. But you wouldn't have, but I'm a fellow student. I'm equivalent to everybody else, and nobody's limited by me and what I can or cannot do in their own growth. That's why, see, it wouldn't work. It would be terrible if I ended up being with a group of people that were looking to me as their older member. I mean, yes, you can examine what I say about the way the classroom was doing things so that you have an understanding about all that. And that's what all those audio tapes will also provide you. So it's not just going to come from me. In fact, the audio tapes are a better provision of what's important. Anyway, that's what I think. I hope that helped with that answer. You mentioned in a previous stream that you had a son. Does your son No, I have a daughter. My vehicle has a daughter. I don't, as a soul, I don't have a, well, now, Tiendo did talk about how they didn't try to say this in terms of applying to everybody necessarily or nobody. They actually provided it, they talked about it to everybody that was with them. Okay, so I should backtrack and just correct it to the accurate way of looking at it. They had a meeting, and they said in the meeting that they felt like we had strains, the students all had strains of humans that we had different strains. And that's when they started also having us write a book. And you can actually go through the audio tapes, and I think there's an index. I provide the index on my blog. Then you can look at those, you can listen to those audio tapes that talk about boxes and also talk about strains, I think, maybe strain singular, and also talk about the book that we were writing. This was in the 80s, because it was when T was still in her vehicle. So, in that sense, I can understand identifying with certain individuals. You know, people have told me that when they look at Junodi, I get that most often, they feel like they know her. I haven't had anybody tell me that they feel like they know me, and I don't, you know, because I'm probably a lot younger than Junodi. I'm probably not one of those that was, I don't know. Doesn't really matter to me what. I mean, I was given the name of somebody that Doe gave us names in 19. I don't like talking about this because the influences just attack me, and they tell me that, you know, you're just on a big ego trip, like you're somebody special. And I am somebody special. I was with Tiendo. And so all the vehicles that are attracted to Tiendo are also special. And you know, but the lesson that I had to learn was not to want to be seen as something special. That's one of the things that T told me would keep me off the spacecraft. That I was I liked to be seen as special. So here I am on videos being seen as special. So that, you know, so I can't get off on this. I don't get off on it, actually. I actually have to be kind of prodded to do these videos. Maybe for that reason, I don't know. I don't need to get into analyzing anymore. But Doe at one point told us that, gave us names of people that were in the past, I think in the Old Testament. Yeah, it was in the Old Testament. Because he said that, he gave it to us on a piece of paper. And he said, throw it away when you're done, and forget, and he said, look it up in the Old Testament to where that name was used, and then so that you know who it's talking about, and then forget about it. Now, he didn't say forget about it as if to say, you know, spend time, just not paying, not put it in, not keep it in your mind. He didn't want us to dwell on it, because that would be like, like dwelling on being somebody that was depicted in the Bible, and that would boost your ego. And Tiendo hated that when they recognized that they were the two witnesses, because they didn't want to tell anybody about it, because whenever somebody would tell them that they were somebody in the past, like in a past life, like Cleopatra, I think was the example they used, they would really, like, run for the hills. They didn't want to have anything to do with that person. And they always wondered how there could be so many Cleopatras around. And so the name that Do gave me was Beziel, or Bezael, or Bezel, or something like that. And it's interesting that I saw a Z in the sky in Corpus Christi, Texas. I wonder if it had, at the time I didn't, it was after I joined. I've told this story many times, so I'm not going to go through it again. It's on a previous one of these last three streams. And Bezael in the Old Testament was, he was assigned the task of like a carpenter. He built he had a hand in building the Holy of Holies. No, not the Holy of Holies, the Ark of the Covenant, which was a wooden box that was encased in gold. That's where the Ten Commandments went inside that. And maybe he did some other things too. I don't remember exactly. But what we're talking about, though, is not the vehicle. We're talking about the soul that was in that vehicle. Maybe that was the first time the soul was planted. And then maybe that soul came back and was one of the 70. Or, or one of the 120 that were in, after Jesus left. Or maybe one of the others, So, let's see, did I cover that enough? I think, oh yeah, I don't have a son. Does that daughter also follow Tiendo? No. I didn't try to get anybody that I met in the human kingdom to believe in Tiendo. I've talked to the woman that I ended up having a child with and living with for 17 years, who I'm not with anymore. I'm not with anybody anymore. No, I tried to introduce her to Christianity through taking her to a local church. I told her that I believe in everything that Jesus taught. And I've also told her that that the Christians aren't representing what Jesus taught. And I mean, not entirely, of course, but if you go to any of the ones that, well, the ones that I went to were teaching out of the Old Testament and, you know, trying to be good humans, which is good to do, of course, to be a good human. So it's a step, but it's not what Jesus taught. And it didn't have to go down this road. I mean, it was, I think the next level knew that it was going to go down this road because they provide the Luciferian space aliens that started Paul. You know, and Paul was the one that made it into a human endeavor, a more human endeavor. You know, was being saved by grace. You know, who's grace? Anybody I know? I mean, which was taken from the truth, but it was made into that, you know, you could sin all you want, basically, and it would be forgiven you every time and over again, and you would still, when you died, you would still go to heaven, but that's not true. I mean, you'll be forgiven, yes. We'll all be forgiven over and over again, like Jesus said, 70 times 7 times we should forgive our brothers and sisters, our fellow humans. He didn't say sisters because at the time, there wasn't the time that wasn't necessary to overcome. Which I want to bring something up about that. Because in 1 Peter, I got to go find it. I think it was 1 Peter chapter 3 where I saw it. Let me see here in a second. Where is it? 1 Peter. There, 1 Peter 3, yeah. Okay, so let me go to that. I hope yeah. It says, I'm not going to take time to go through it, but, well, okay, one second, bear with me, please. I'm going to put it in here. Okay, so 1 Peter chapter 3, jeez. Likewise, ye wives, be in subjugation to your own husband. Now, if there's anybody with a female vehicle in this chat room, don't get offended like this. Please, you know, stay with me on it, because it's going to show that the female task was a difficult task, actually, maybe even more difficult than the male task. What I believe, and 1 Peter reveals this, I believe it says it pretty clearly. Likewise, ye wives, be in subjugation to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may, without the word, be won by the conversation of the wives. Okay. Be in subjugation to your own husband. Okay, fine. People talk about that all the time. Subjugation to your husband. That, if any obey not the word, so if those husbands don't obey the word, they also may, without the word, without saying anything, be won by the conversation of the wives. So in other words, what the wives say will help them to obey the word. In other words, not using the word to win, to help the males do better, but to use their own minds to help the males do better. So they had a more superior task. But it was also a difficult task because they had to restrain themselves. And they didn't get the glory of being right. Because the males might not even recognize it. Because they might be glued to the word only as being, like the wives, what they say isn't going to be true. But they may come to see it, anyway. Or they may recognize that the wives had more insights than they did. You can play it in a number of ways, I'm sure. But when I saw that, I thought, wow. And the way the women that were considered to be part of the disciples of Jesus were doing things for Jesus that the disciples were finding fault with. But Jesus corrected them and said, so being a woman in a woman's vehicle is not a lesser position, although it looks like it is, to the man. And to women that don't recognize the value of, well, I don't know. And we see an example of that to where T took the position of being a servant to Do in a sense. She hardly ever talked. I mean, she did plenty of talking. I mean, in the craft when she had things to tell us about, And, I mean, it's not like she was mute all the time. She was not. She talked as much as Do did, like in the labs. And but at meetings, she didn't talk as much as Do did. And then you can see that in the Black Hawk tapes as well. And you can also see the way Do looked up to T in the Black Hawk tapes. And and the way that T didn't treat Do in a way that he didn't know anything, and I mean, she asked him questions too about things, and she would say, "What do you think?" And that's what we all were trained to mimic that behavior. That's where the "I could be wrong" lesson came from. What do you think? It was almost like, you go through a door, and both partners would be going through a door in the room, and one would want to, let the other one go first, and you go first, like the Abbott and Costello. No, you go first. No, you go first. We didn't do that, physically. We went through the door. If one was ahead of the other one, they just went through the door ahead of the other one. They didn't stop and, say, you go first. They didn't do any of that stuff at all. There was no... I don't remember polite trees like that, and but in terms of working on problems, the object was, what do you think T and Do would do in this circumstance? So if you are ever in a circumstance where you're working with others that are as committed as you are to following the teachings of T and Do, then or just want to abide by all those lesson materials, without, they don't have to commit to you that they're abiding by T and Do's lessons. We don't need to drill each other, do one, I don't know. Maybe I'm off track by saying that, but it just gets into this I'm better than you because I know this better, all that competition. There's no competition in the next level. You're judging your behavior against your older member's behavior and what your older member gave you. So when we were eating, we were not allowed to look at other people's plates to see what how they were eating. Whether they were finishing, whether they were, because we were taught to actually eat evenly the items that were on the main entree. Where we had our salads we experimented with salads first and salads only, and salads, we never had salads after. If we had a bigger entree, like with a heavy protein meal that had different meats in it. So I don't know if maybe I think I got off the track of what I was talking about, but we'll just leave it and maybe we'll come back to it. I'll come back to it. I keep saying we, but I don't claim to be more than one person. I would hope that T and Do and crew would be helping me. I feel like they do. I do feel them. But I don't know. And I certainly can't guarantee that everything I say is from their minds. Okay, let me see if... okay, I'm going to go down to the next question. Why was even Odie Dana did not appear sharing her testimony in the exit videos, even though he had a female vehicle? She wasn't in them. That's right, I can't see her in them. I don't know. Even though he joined in 1993, having come in touch with the information through her brother, I believe, Steel Odie. Gary was his first name, I believe, or the first name that he used in the group when he was doing out-of-craft tasks. I don't want to give his last name. It's not the same as this one. So maybe he's a half sister or something like that. I think I used to know this, but I don't know it now. So I was partnered with Even Odie while we were doing the 1994 public meetings. She was very sensitive, but not overly sensitive, but very tea-like, Very few words, and a beautiful countenance. I know I saw her picture in the spanning, She was definitely in one of the videos that Doe was taking of all the students. And he settled on her, and she gave a little bit of a smile. So I don't know. I don't know why. She knew that they were exiting when that video was taken, by the way. And she had many opportunities to not do that. They all did. I was witness to the start of those opportunities. I know of 2 major opportunities where they were given that up. And then I know they were given that opportunity after that because I know that, well, if that's the way the classroom was. Doe didn't want anybody there that didn't prove to him, actually, that they wanted to be there. And that's why Rio left. Because Rio didn't share with Doe that he was not going to stay there until the exit. At least he didn't say that. He told Doe that in his book. But he did say that in his book that he didn't intend to stay there to the exit. Now, he might not have realized that right away while he was in the group, because I know there's things that I didn't realize while I was in the group. You know, I thought I was wholehearted 100%, but I was cheating a little bit here and there. And that cheating was, I guess, a form of a little bit of doubt. Well, I don't know if it's the same as doubt, but maybe it's a little form of it. Anyway, so I don't know what else I can say about Ivanoti. She's definitely in a video where Doe is panning the classroom. I don't know if he goes to everybody or not. I didn't try to examine it that way. Juan, I tried looking up your question. Oh no, somebody else is answering that question. It appears the vehicle you're speaking of was female. Yes, that's right. Female vehicle. Did you make a typo or am I? Okay, that's fine. Oh, never mind. I see you corrected in your second post. Yeah, I'm kind of going with the flow. I don't know how often I'll do this, but it seems like it's pretty often. I mean, there's so much to cover, right? I mean, it's like I could probably be doing this every day until I'm dead. My vehicle's dead. And I'd probably be still touching on new stuff. I shouldn't say new stuff as if it's just like stuff. New material, new perspectives of T and Doe and prophecy and everything. We didn't use slang in the group. We certainly didn't use 4-letter words, curse words. It's considered crude, actually. I mean, T and Doe would, they would use that word all, you all, they would say that sometimes. And so we said that. But it didn't matter really what words, there were certain words that we weren't going to use, we knew that. But like, for instance, sex wasn't a word that we used in the classroom because T and Doe didn't want us to stimulate that vibration in our consciousness, in our minds. And because what's in our minds then adds to the stimulus of the vehicle and whatever you're talking about, potentially. It depends how far you let it go. If you cut the thought off, you know, that has that word in it, before it registers in your mind, then you're doing a pretty good job, and maybe there aren't any ramifications. But if you hear the thought that has that word associated with it, then it's probably going to stimulate some production of testosterone or into something that your body would then want to get rid of. So it builds. You don't want to, produce more of it. It'll lead to a second thought and third thought. The object was to cut it off, and so you can get to the point. I did get to the point to where I was able to stop a thought that I knew was a sensuous, sexual thought before it registered in my head. I did get to the point to where I could smell it coming. Tiendo, I think, talked about it like that. Not clearly talked about it as smell, but T once said that she could smell spirits. So that's why I say smell it. But then when I fell, and I let all those thoughts come into my head, it's like I had no control at all. And so it's like I thought I had all this control, I mean, I could if something did come into my head, for instance, looking down the blouse of a female vehicle in the classroom, and I didn't even have to have a thought, I wonder if I could see her, breasts, or I wonder what it would be like to, see them, or wonder if it would be like to touch them, I didn't have any thoughts like that. I just had a thought of, taking a peek. And then if I saw the bra, then it set me off even more. And I could feel it actually as a little feeling in my groin area. And that still happens. I can still feel that happen. I think it actually even happened by talking about it. A little, not an orgasm or anything, but something that would then end up leading to an orgasm as it grows, because it ends up, the more we indulge in it, the more it grows to where we have to get rid of it. And Tiendo said that that if we had a nocturnal emission, that we weren't stimulating, like we didn't do anything at night to stimulate it. We weren't touching ourselves because we were instructed to sleep with our hands above our waist. And to go to sleep at night and say, ask the next level to protect us and wake us up if we were being attacked by influences. And wake us up and go into the bathroom and throw cold water on your face. Or if you're in the campground, stick your head in the bucket of cold water that we kept in a couple campgrounds, because it was right. I don't remember where we got the water from. I mean, we hauled the water in the campgrounds from the creeks, or if we had to go to a rest area to fill up our 6-gallon jugs, 5-gallon, 6-gallon jugs, with pickup trucks full of them, or vans full of them. So I don't know, I'll give it a little bit of... Okay, let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, I'm glad you appreciate these broadcasts, EC 762. I don't think you'd like them if you didn't have some of Tiendo's information in you, some mind in you. So go with it. No, I'm not telling you what to do, of course. I just think that we shouldn't let things stand in the way of us growing towards Tiendo. Whatever pace, whatever timing, ask them to help you. Doesn't mean leaving everything behind necessarily right away, but you have to understand that formula. We all have to understand the formula of leaving everything behind. That's what to actually graduate, especially when the older member is incarnate, that's when it's absolutely necessary at that point to leave everything behind, to be with them. Now it doesn't seem like it's necessary because they didn't say that it was. That's why they said that the formula was to do that. And but the overriding requirement was to believe in who they are and who they said they came from. They came from as the creators of the planet and the life forms, and to stand for them. So that's the test. That's the biggest test that we have, is to stand for them. And it doesn't seem like it right now. Okay, but it took me a long time to work up to doing this. It took me years to be so direct, because even though we don't know much about the negativity that's coming to us, as soon as we start talking about it to the public, we're exposing ourselves to thoughts, discarnates, Luciferian space aliens, in a way that's multiplied. And it's the same thing with people that get famous for anything. They're actually more bombarded by negativity than other people that aren't famous, that don't get that attention. And fame doesn't have anything to do with the growth level, especially in relationship to the next level. In fact, it might be the opposite. That there might be souls that failed, but doesn't mean that they failed until they actually leave their vehicles, if they haven't connected with the next level in some way. And might never know. They might leave their vehicle and they may be famous and they may have connected with the next level, but I just wouldn't know about it. So we can't judge anybody. But you can't get into the next level while you're wealthy and famous, unless the next level makes some wild, very, very different some very different exception. That's why Jesus said he just didn't want to, he was just showing how he knew his older member could make exceptions. Helps keep us on track when we say things that are absolute, to recognize that the next level could see it differently and do it differently. And Tiendo always had a way of doing something that was unique in my mind. It was always like a puzzle. Well, I mean, it was always like a something new to think about that I think anybody listening to this knows that when the first time they started to hear about UFOs, maybe it was automatic for many people to just automatically recognize it's true, like it was for me. But it didn't really dawn on me that it was real until I was in the group for a while in 1987 around then. And when Doe brought that book in, UFO Crash at Aztec, New Mexico. And he gave us an assigned task of reading parts of the appendix, where they were doing the autopsies reports, and other spots too. But that's what I remember. I was in the basement of this, well, lower floor of this house where we were living in Boulder Canyon on Lost Angel Road, actually, it was on. And we were in the, and that craft, Doe's quarters was above a gold mine, an old gold mine. And the craft next to it was where half the students were living. And I was among those. The other half were living down in the Denver area. Anyway, that's where he said, I'm starting to get tired. I'm losing my train of thought. Oh, I was talking about the book UFO Crash at Aztec. When I read that, then I thought to myself, wow, this is real. I mean, I had an epiphany that this was real. Before that, I didn't disbelieve it. But you know, we had that book of the Roswell crash, the first one that came out, and we had the whole time when we were in crafts, you know, starting in the 80s, and I don't know if I ever picked it up and read it, because I just wasn't interested in UFOs. So but I believed it possible, like when I heard the Roswell crash over the radio before I joined with Tiendo, and my friends in the room in Newport, Oregon, they were in the kitchen actually, in this tiny little apartment, and I was in the living room and in this easy chair, sitting there listening to the radio, and a broadcast came over there talking about how there was a UFO crash and there were bodies that were found in it, in the wreckage. And I thought it was a news report. And then they kept on talking about it, and I jumped up in my chair and I said to the people that were in the apartment, "Did you hear that?" I started to repeat what they said, and they looked at me like I was no big deal. It wasn't anything interesting. So I put it out of my mind. I just didn't think about it anymore after that. The next I heard was, some months later, I saw the UFO poster. So, right, we never know when we're going to wake up. Oh, there's the first Peter. I'm finally at the bottom of this. Oh, no, I'm not. So John's asking, John Thompson, if God came this time as a woman, T, the Bible must be rewritten, and perhaps it needs to be. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Sawyer with love. Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm doing right now. But I'm not the one hopefully doing it. Hopefully T and Doe are, well, they're doing it because of everything they gave us that now I'm trying to bring out by going deeper into the scriptures. They put the scriptures, the primary scriptures, in the back of their book. All right, so those are the ones that are most pertinent to the overcoming process and separating from the world. That's what T and Doe came here to teach, because that's what was required for the first fruits. Now for us, we can still go in that direction just like they did, exactly the way they did, if we want to. There's nothing holding us back from that. But we should be talking to T and Doe about that a lot to see if that's the best step to take. But what I wanted to bring up was what that reminded me of was that in T was still in her vehicle, and I think it was in the craft that we were in when T left her vehicle, in Dallas, Texas, near White Rock Lake. We lived off of Mockingbird Lane. And, wow, birds. And we were actually given birds in that house. T brought, they didn't live with us at the time, but they did live in that craft with all of us at one point. But that's also where they moved up to Black Hawk from that craft. And we would travel from that craft up to Black Hawk, Colorado, for retreats. Black Hawk, Mockingbird Lane, and we had finches, we had parrots, and we had parakeets. We had one parrot, and T and Doe had a parrot in their quarters, I think. And they had a couple of helpers, I think, in their quarters with them at that time. I think those would have been the quarters where T ended up leaving her vehicle from, because her vehicle didn't die in the hospital; it died in the house. So I may be wrong about that. I'm not positive that she died in the house. I know she was in the house right up until, for the 2 weeks that we knew that she was sick. When she wasn't coming, when she didn't come to the meetings that we had during that time. And I knew she was in the craft then because those said that she was sleeping most of the time. And Jan Odie and Liv Odie went over there to stay with them, T and Doe. And Liv Odie was a nurse, so she was, I guess helping in that regard. I know they took her to the hospital to have the diagnosis of cancer in the liver. But I believe Doe said that I'm going to have to listen to that tape again. That's actually in that Heaven's Gate podcast, which I think I do have. I forget which number it was. The tape where Doe's talking about how he told him, instructed him not to tell Terry about her departure, her exit, her death from the vehicle. So, what I didn't say yet was about the Bible. T and Doe gave instructions for Dan Sodi to, as I understood it, rewrite the Bible. Now, when they first awakened, in actually the second stage of the, well, when they first awakened, you could say it was when they met. There's a certain amount of awakening, but Doe didn't really recognize T then. And T wondered about why he didn't recognize her, but she recognized him. Anyway, so then they were trying to figure out what they had to do together, because they felt like they had something to do together. That was all a process of getting to where they left Houston, feeling like they had a task to do together, and they had to leave because the negativity was building against them from their friends and family and all that. And so they went to Bourne, Texas, or Bernie, Texas. I'm not sure which way to say it. I say born because that's where they were really born. Again, of spirit at that point. Their soul, the souls, well, whatever, the information was coming into them from the next level at that point. For the 6 weeks that they were there. Actually, less than 6 weeks is what Doe said. Less than 6 weeks. It's interesting that 6 weeks would be 42 days, right? So less than 42 days would be 41 days or 42 days, or 40 daes. I know people know this, but I'm dramatizing it. Or 40 days, or 39, or 38, right? But if you said 6 weeks, you know it wasn't going to be 5 weeks, because he would have said 5 weeks, right? And he might have said 5 weeks if he was just a couple days over. He might have said more than 5 weeks, maybe, if he was going to mean like 44 days. No, 42 days, right? I'm getting confused. No, it'd be 36, and then it'd be 38. Anyway, I'm trying to show that he was bringing us closer to 40, which would be the proverbial, or the prophetic 40 number of Jesus in the desert for 40 days awakening. Which Doe didn't like to follow the prophecy. So that's why, he automatically just said it that way, I think. Because the reason I know that is because he asked us if we wanted to break the Burroughs cleanser fast that we were on, which was lemonade drink. He asked us if we want, at the 39th day, he asked us if we wanted to break the fast or go to 40 days. And the right answer that, I don't know that we all got the right answer. I kind of, in a sense, I kind of wanted to go to the 40 days. because I was relating it to the scripture, and but I didn't say that. I knew that the best answer that a student can have when the older member says something like that is, I don't know, what do you think? But if you really want me to come up with something, I'll guess at what you might think, which he did give us an exercise to do that a time or two. And you know, I would have said then 40. So, but he ended up stopping the fast at 39. That's the moral to that story. But in the Bible story, and writing the Bible, I thought I remembered a time where it came up that Dan Sodi was writing the Bible, but didn't get very far. And I think they just dropped it at that point, because I never heard about doing that after that. But now we have a chance to do it. I'm looking at messages again on chat. Okay, steak and eggs, okay. Did those show any different patterns to teaching biological males as to teaching the rest of the group? Well, yes. Like for instance, when he was considering first going through the castration procedure, and he started to have Livodi, who was a nurse and had worked as an orchiectomist, which was the removal of, not as the doctor, but as the assisting nurse with the surgery. She worked as an orchiectomist nurse, which is the removal of the testicles due to cancer most of the time. I think that's the reason for it. He had heard start to gather the materials to do it. He was thinking that it would be done on him. And so when he did that, he actually told everybody in the class in a meeting that he had considered it. Well, no, wait. The order of events was that he had a meeting with the males. No, he had a meeting with everybody first, where he said that he actually said that he had a nocturnal emission, is what he told us. And and then he went on to describe that he was considering having the castration procedure. And this is at the same time where we had been studying the book of the Essenes, the Essene Christian Faith, I think was the name of the book. It's like a pink book, a little hardcover. And it talks about the Dead Sea Scrolls. And how they were actually self-castrating themselves by taking a rock and crushing their testicles. And I remember when Doe told us that and talked about it, he cringed. It was like, oh my gosh, like whoa. He couldn't imagine it, but he also said that he felt like the human vehicle was designed to, in such a way like a male cow's vehicle, to where you could pinch off the testicles, like with rubber bands or a rope. or cut them off. And so they obviously knew that it was through the testosterone that the males had in abundance in their system, more so than the average female, although that may be changing now. That by getting rid of the testicles, you stop the production of that testosterone, therefore you reduce your sex drive, or maybe even eliminated it entirely, unless I think you had a strong habit. Then you'd have to get rid of the habit too, which might not be that hard to do if you didn't have the hormones flowing through your system. Or unless you were being stimulated by things that you would see all the time, and then maybe the habit would be hard to break as well. But anyway, so I'm going to have to bring this to a close pretty soon. Just to the males. So then when he was actually talking about then after that, he gathered the males together for several days later for a meeting, and it was just the males. And he said that he had examined the procedure for castrating females, but it was too invasive. Now, actually, he told us that another time at his quarters. Just some of the males went to his quarters, and females went to his quarters, about a dozen of us. And I remember thinking that it was just about a dozen of us, and thinking how special that felt, as if I was one of the disciples, one of the apostles, which didn't mean I was. Just means that he had instructions for those individuals who were going to go there. So I mean, he could have done it as a test, to see whether we go to the ego of some of the vehicles. T could have given him that to do as a test, because when he did that, T wasn't there when we were talking about this. We didn't talk about castration at all when T was in her vehicle. But I don't recall anything like that. So he described the procedure of that was cutting open the sac that the testicles are inside of, and snipping the connectors and sewing it back up. And okay, so then some time passed, and that's when Doe summoned the group over to his quarters, which were not too far away from where we were living at the time in Dallas. I think it was Dallas, but it might not have been the Mockingbird house. Because we lived in a number of places in Dallas and Garland, but I think it was. No, it wasn't, because we had meetings in the big room in the Mockingbird house, so it was a different craft. Anyway, so he ended up calling us to 12 members and that was Liv Odie, Jan Odie, June Odie, Log Odie, Hav Odie, I think Arth Odie, andody, I think. Maybe not andody. Six. Surody, for sure. I mean, liver in January might have lived there already. No, I'm not sure I remember, but I know Haverty was there because Doe asked us in that's when he described looking into the procedure for females and males. And that's when he said that it felt like it was too invasive for a female to have the castration done. So, but he was still considering it for the males, and he wanted to know if anybody had any reservations about going through that procedure. I think the ones he picked, I think Mercody was there. Maybe Sarah Fody. I think the vehicles he picked were, well, never mind. I don't need to say that. But many of them left the class. So, I don't know if Dan said he was there or not. I know Dan said he left the classroom not too long after that. No, he was there. I think Dan said he was there too. Anyway, I don't need to keep on him and on with that. But, so that's an example. That's one big example of when he talked to just the males. And then, you know, privately, I mean, I don't know if he ever talked to females by themselves. Or if he talked to the females. I don't think so. But I could be wrong. I could have just not known about it. See, I think that the females, they still had to overcome their sexuality. No question about that. I know one time one of the females reported that she had a nocturnal emission, I think, of some sort. Either that or that she masturbated. I'm not sure which it was. Now that I come to think of it. But, I mean, we weren't allowed to report it that way. We would have had to say we indulged in sensuality. And that we wrote a note to Doe or Tiendo about the details. Because Tiendo didn't want us to stimulate those thoughts with everybody else around. Okay, let's see. What was a heavy meal? Oh, I said a heavy... Oh, could you tell us what kinds of it's you had eaten? Okay. We had all kinds of diets. We tried everything under the sun. Health diets. I mean, it started, I think, with a version of the Pritikin diet with very little meat. Like meat every, hamburgers or hot dogs or, I don't know if we had hot dogs, but we had hamburgers. We made them ourselves. And once every, we would have a meat item, I think, once every 2 weeks. And it was, or once a week. During one of two meals, we would have sometimes bacon, with eggs for breakfast, and we might have had sausage one time, little breakfast links, and then we had hamburgers sometimes, and then we had ground beef in like a meat sauce. We had chicken. We had like a barbecue chicken. So anyway, but then we had times where we were vegetarian and vegan and fruitarian and for periods of time, each of those, and the mixtures of them, kind of, and grew our own foods and a liquid diet, and did the Burroughs cleanser and fasted on water and for 39 days. Fasted on water for 2 weeks, and air the first day, and then water the rest of the 13 days, and the Hippocrates diet somewhat, which was a lot of juicing, a lot of vegetable juicing, and a lot of organics. And when we lived in California, and we even started a little company. It was called ALERT, Advanced Life Extension Research Team, and we went to a flea market and sold off excess organic foods like carrots and stuff. We'd buy them on the docks in LA in the big bundles, big 50-pound bags. Anyway, so that's a little bit about diet. And then we ate at fast food places when we were going out in the world, and when we didn't have any money left, and we were still trying to do our work for T&O, spreading the word. And we would ask help for food, and we would get a voucher, and we would go and eat whatever where it was that we'd get a voucher for. Or we'd walk into a restaurant, and we'd ask them if they could help us. We told them we were on a mission for the kingdom of God, and we could use help with our food. And sometimes the managers would sit us down and give us a big meal, like an Olive Garden. That happened to us a couple times, where we were given whatever we wanted. 12 of us at the same time, 10 or 12 of us, because we traveled in small groups during that time. Anyway, that's a little bit about food. What was a heavy meal? Well, I meant to say what was the word for it? Heavy protein, which was a flesh food. It was a heavy protein, chicken, fish. We didn't really eat fish. I believe Doe said that there was something bad in shrimp that humans haven't discovered yet. That wasn't good for you. And he also said that about mushrooms, that there was something not good in. Now I think I read that because I don't remember him actually talking about it. I'm not sure where I read it. Maybe in the Transfiguration Diet book. I'll have to try to. I got to type that one in too. I need to hire somebody to type. I wish I had the money to do that. Maybe the next level will help me have the money to do that. Or somebody else will do it. And share it with everybody instead of making it into a book that they copyright and sell for themselves. So let's see if there's any other questions. Since the 90s and throughout the years until now, what was your belief in the Heaven's Gate faith? Did you have any doubts? Did you have any renewals of your faith? If I may ask, of course. Yes, of course. I'm glad to have your questions. Whatever I can do. There's a lot to answer in that question. Well, my belief since the 90s, well, I joined in 1975, and I believed everything Tiendo taught. So that's, in order to study what that is, if you want, I told people that they could, send an email requesting that data to my to Sawyer HG, as in Heaven's Gate, H and G, at yahoo.com. Send me a message that you want that data, and I'll send you a couple gigs worth of data. That is the teachings of Tiendo, and includes my book, since they said that everything that Jesus said in the Gospels was accurate, that the Next Level worked very hard to keep that accurate. For this time now to be clues for them and the students for awakening and to use now. They didn't say that part. They said as clues for their awakening, for our awakening, for everybody's awakening. But we didn't teach it. Tiendo didn't teach out of the Bible. They didn't have Bible lessons. They didn't take a verse and go through like I'm doing with like a lot of the verses. They didn't do that at all. They didn't even. They talked about what things that Jesus taught and said and did. Not a tremendous amount until the 90s. Then we talked about it more. Because then Doe was preparing to provide the beginning of his coming as Jesus, as the return of Jesus, because Jesus wasn't coming in the same vehicle that was named Jesus. Anyway, so I'm going to skip on to the next part of your question. Did you have any doubts? I didn't. I didn't think I did. I mean, there were things that he said that Tiendo, well, that Doe said that I could say that I felt I didn't believe. Actually, what Tiendo said, like for instance, they told us we weren't going to die at first, in 1975 and 6. Our physical vehicles were not going to die. That they were going to go on the spacecraft with our physical human vehicles. And when I heard that, I thought that didn't make sense. I didn't think that was going to be true. I thought that I was going to die, and I thought I was going to die a martyr. Somebody, not a martyr like the way. Well, yeah, the two witnesses actually, the word witness actually comes from the same word as martyr. Because you are giving your life, you're giving your entire humanness up. And that includes your physical vehicle. Now, how it actually takes place that you leave your vehicle is not necessarily predetermined. Or it's not predetermined in our minds, as the students. And Tiendo didn't know exactly how it was going to happen either. And that's why when they found out that they were shot down by the press, they realized after that after they reawakened a little bit, not reawakened, but when they got back on track to continue with the mission, they realized that that's what they were picking up on as their was the depth of the mission at that point. Although I realized later that there was 2 points there to where they were exiting. and one was they're subdued, they're overcome first, and then they kill themselves, which is the way I've been able to translate it, legally translate apokataino, which I talk about in my Revelation 11 video on my YouTube channel here. But so I believed all that. And did you have any doubts? So that was one of the doubts I had. I had other ones, little tiny ones. You know, I mean, they seemed little tiny, but they really weren't little tiny when it comes down to it. Like one was when Doe compared us to the Borg, the Star Trek Borg. You know, the people that were in that big globe-shaped spacecraft, that Nirabu kind of thing. And they had to, the way he was comparing it was with the way that the next level is like a beehive, in the sense that the next level has all different tasks to do, which bees have different tasks that they do, and they get sent out, and they do battle with spirits, you know, and they look, I don't have to keep on going through the analogy of it, but they weren't talking about it as if they were automatons, but they had to come back to the next level. They had to stay connected to the next level periodically in order to keep on going and get new tasks to do. And so that was the illustration of how the next level is like the holy mind. It's the kingdom of the mind of that's the chain of mind into the chief of chiefs mind, and that's running the whole show. And when I heard that, I thought, oh gosh, I felt like kind of trivial, I guess. You know, it was like making me into a robot, even though I knew at the time when he said that, and I felt like I wanted to be a robot for Tiendo. But when he put it that way, I just had that response that was like, ooh, I was kind of cringing a little bit inside. I didn't say anything. I don't think I even showed anything on my face, but maybe I did. But so I count that as like having a little bit of a doubt. And then when he used to say that you'd be in the next level and you're going to get to the point to where you're holding on to the cliff by just your fingertips. And I just, you know, and he talked about how hard it was to leave the world behind. And for me, it wasn't that hard, because I didn't have any attachments, really. I mean, I had a little bit of an attachment to my music band that I was playing with, and I had somewhat of an attachment that was partially broken before then to my partner, who I was with for 5 years, living exclusively together as like a man and a wife. And but so, you know, so that wasn't very hard for me to break. So I would always think, you know, why are you saying it's so hard? You know, the hard